You expect to fix that with this old thing?
When your high-tech fails, true expertise prevails.
The millionaire laughed at her tools, a cold, sharp laugh that echoed through the whole garage. But 2 days later, that same man came running back, smoke pouring from his Lamborghini, panic in his eyes, and the only person who could save him was the black mechanic he'd mocked in front of everyone. What he didn't know was that this breakdown, this moment, would not only humble him, it would transform his entire life. The first sound wasn't the engine. It wasn't even footsteps. It was the sharp, metallic clink of an old wrench tapping against rusted bolts, echoing through the hot, cramped garage like a heartbeat trying to stay calm. That rhythm belonged to Maya Brooks, the only black woman mechanic for miles. The kind of mechanic who didn't need fancy tools or shiny floors to earn respect. She earned it with sweat, with grit, with a backbone carved out of long days and longer nights. But on that heavy midday afternoon, while the sun pressed itself against the thin tin roof like it wanted to crush the whole place, something else pressed down harder. The quiet feeling of being watched, judged, dismissed before she even stood up. Maya lay half under a rusted pickup truck, her shirt sticking to her back, her hands trembling not in fear, but in exhaustion. She'd been working since sunrise. She wiped her forehead with her sleeve, leaving a streak of oil across her temple. She didn't care. Oil was part of her language, part of her story, part of her strength. And still, she felt it, that moment right before a storm enters the room. A shift in the air, a silence that makes your spine sit straight. Then it came. A sound that didn't belong here. A roar, sharp, flashy, loud on purpose. The kind of sound some people use the way others use insults. A Lamborghini Aventador, bright orange like it was on fire, slid into the gravel driveway as if it didn't touch the ground. The engine purred with arrogance. It didn't just stop. It posed. And when the door lifted upward like a bird spreading its wings, the whole garage seemed to breathe differently. Then he stepped out. Vincent Hale, millionaire real estate mogul, a man wrapped in expensive fabric and a sense of entitlement so thick it walked into a room. Before he did, his shoes were polished, his watch gleamed, his smirk was permanent, like God himself owed him interest. And the moment he stepped toward Maya's small workspace, every mechanic nearby went silent in the way people stay quiet around someone who thinks they own the air. Maya slid out from under the truck, pushed herself up slowly, her clothes smeared with grease and heat and work. She saw him walk past the other bays, walk past the fancy lifts, walk past the mechanics who used tools imported from places she couldn't even pronounce. He didn't glance at any of them. He walked straight toward her, and when his eyes landed on her box of tools, old, mismatched, scarred from years of use, he didn't blink. He didn't hide the disdain crawling across his face. Instead, he let out a laugh. Not loud, not innocent, but sharp, thin, deliberate, the kind of laugh people use to stab you without touching you. People still fix cars with antiques. He asked, nudging her wrench with the toe of his overpriced shoe. He spoke like he was talking down a flight of stairs, like she was beneath him and he was just trying to remind her of her place. A few of the mechanics shifted uncomfortably. One looked away. Another pretended to tighten bolts that were already tight. That's the thing about public humiliation. It spreads like smoke. Nobody wants to breathe it in, so they step back and let you choke alone. Maya wiped her hands on a rag and didn't say a single word. Instead, she rose to her feet slowly, deliberately. She wasn't tall, but she stood with a kind of quiet strength that made her look 10 feet high. She looked Vincent straight in the eyes, and suddenly the smirk on his face twitched. Not much, half a second, but it was enough to know he didn't expect her spine to be this straight. "Do you need help with something, sir?" she finally asked, her voice steady, calm, controlled. The kind of calm that makes arrogant people nervous. Vincent scoffed, looking around as if the garage was beneath his standards. "I thought this place had at least one qualified mechanic," he said, gesturing toward her tools again. "Didn't realize you all were collecting museum pieces. Someone in the back snickered. Someone else whispered, "Man, he's really going at her." But Maya stayed still. She didn't flinch. She didn't fire back. She learned long ago that some insults aren't meant to be answered. Some insults reveal more about the one speaking than the one listening. She simply knelt down, picked up her old wrench with the same respect she gave her craft, and placed it back into her toolbox as if Vincent's words meant nothing. But deep inside, something sharp lodged itself into her chest. Not pain, not shame. Something else. Something heavier. The weight of knowing that no matter how hard she worked, some people would always see the tool before they saw the hand. The metal before the skill. The woman before the mechanic. Vincent walked away toward his car, still shaking his head, still wearing that smug smile. "I'll go somewhere modern," he muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Somewhere that uses tools younger than my watch." But as he opened the car door, Maya said quietly, "Your engine's running a little hot." Her voice was soft, barely above a breath, but it made him turn. He frowned. "It's a Lamborghini. It runs how I tell it to run." She didn't argue. She just watched as he slammed the door shut and revved the engine again, louder this time. As if the sound itself could drown out her warning, the garage shook from the force. Dust fell from the roof. The mechanics watched his ego peel out of the driveway, and Maya just stood there, wiping her brow, her mind replaying his laugh again and again. Not because it hurt her, but because of what she saw behind it. Fear, insecurity. A man so desperate to stand taller that he had to make someone else small. What neither of them knew was that life had already chosen the moment things would flip. That laugh, that single cruel laugh, would become the exact reason he would return. Not in arrogance, not in power, but in desperation. And the next time he walked through the garage, nothing about him would be the same. Not his engine, not his pride, not the man he thought he was, and the lesson waiting for him would burn hotter than the sun. 2 days later, the heat came back with a grudge. It sat on the street like a weight, pressing down on the tin roofs, on the cracked pavement, on the people who had no choice but to work through it. Inside the 14th Street garage, fans pushed hot air in circles, doing more for noise than for comfort. Maya had grease on her hands, a smear on her cheek, and a calm rhythm in her chest. It was just another day of broken things that needed fixing. She was leaning over the open hood of an old taxi when she heard it. That sound, the kind that doesn't ask for attention, it demands it. A loud, angry roar, like the road itself was being scratched open. Heads turned before the car even appeared. Phones came out without anyone saying a word. People knew that sound didn't belong to their side of town. The orange Lamborghini slid into view like a flame that lost control. It didn't glide this time. It jerked, coughed, snapped forward. The driver's face was tight, his hands too stiff on the wheel. The car pulled up halfway, then stopped with a shudder that felt wrong. The passenger door opened, and Vincent Hale stepped out. Same man, same expensive watch, same aura that said he was used to walking into places and owning the air. But there was something different in his eyes this time. A flicker of worry behind the arrogance. A tiny crack. Smoke slipped from the back of the car, and thin white lines at first, like it was whispering. Then it thickened, darkened, turned into something uglier. The driver rushed around to the back, panic clear in every step. "Sir." The dashboard lit up like fireworks on the way here, he said, voice low but not low enough. People heard. People always hear when trouble follows the rich. Temperature, engine light, everything. Maya wiped her hands on a rag and stepped closer on instinct. Not because it was a Lamborghini, not because of who owned it, but because smoke meant danger, fire, metal failing. And under all that, human lives. "Pop the hood," she called out, loud enough to cut through the murmurs, before that heat builds up anymore. But Vincent saw her before he heard the rest of her words. His eyes dropped to her same old coveralls, same oil stains, same brown skin, same woman he had laughed at. His pride stepped forward before his common sense could. He raised a hand like he was stopping traffic, Like she was crossing a line she wasn't allowed to cross. No, no. I said I'd take it to a real service center. His voice wasn't just loud. It was meant to carry. Meant to land in every ear standing there. Not some backyard charity shop using scrap metal and prayers. The words floated over the crowd, then sank into the concrete like poison. Someone chuckled nervously. Someone looked down at their shoes. The driver winced, eyes dropping. The mechanic at the next bay turned away, as if hiding inside a carburetor. Maya felt it. The sting. It wasn't new, but every insult had its own sharp edge. Her throat tightened for a second, but she swallowed it down. Like she always did. She didn't answer him. Didn't argue. Her silence was its own kind of strength, but it didn't mean it didn't hurt. Her hands curled behind her back, fingers pressing into her palm until her nails left tiny half-moons in her skin. Her tools sat on the workbench behind her. The same old box, the same antiques he had mocked, each one paid for with hours of sweat, late nights, skipped meals, and the kind of patience rich men never have to understand. To him, they were a joke. To her, they were the reason people trusted this garage enough to come back. Vincent turned to the driver, irritation spilling over. Get it to the dealership. They know what to do. I'm not letting this place, he said, his eyes tossing the whole garage into one pile. Touch a car that costs more than this whole block. The driver nodded weakly and slipped behind the wheel. He turned the key. The engine tried to roar, but all that came out was a deep, sick cough. Like it hurt, like the car itself was begging to stop. The temperature needle, the one Maya could see from where she stood, jumped. A coil of darker smoke curled from the back, thicker, more aggressive. People stepped back. Heat rolled off the engine in waves you could almost see. Stop turning it, Maya called out again. This time sharper. You're cooking the block from the inside. Another minute and you're asking for a fire. Her voice cut through the smoke, firm, certain, not scared. Vincent snapped his head toward her, jaw tight. He hated the way she sounded sure. He hated that she knew something he didn't. He hated that he could feel his control slipping. Right there in the middle of a street he thought he was above. I told you, he said. But the sentence didn't even finish, because the car answered for him. The Lamborghini shuddered, let out one last choking growl, and died. Completely. The lights on the dash flickered, faded, then went black. The engine fell silent in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt final dot, and it stopped right in front of the garage gate, right in front of her, for a second. No one said anything. The city noise faded. Even the fans in the garage sounded quieter. Silence fell hard, thick, and uncomfortable. The kind of silence where people start choosing sides in their minds, even if their mouths stay shut. A kid standing across the street whispered, "Oh," another voice, older, rough with years and cigarettes, muttered, "That's what happens when you think money makes you smarter than experience." Behind Maya, one of the older mechanics leaned on a car door and said just loud enough to be heard, "Let her handle it. She's the best we've got." That sentence moved through the crowd like a small wave. Heads nodded, eyes turned. This time, they weren't looking at the car. They were looking at her. Vincent felt it. That shift, 2 days ago, all the eyes had followed him. His suit, his car, his laugh. Now, those same eyes watched the woman he mocked, waiting to see what she'd do. His jaw tightened, muscles jumping under his skin. Pride screamed inside his chest. It whispered all the usual lines. You're the millionaire. You don't back down. Don't let her show you up. Don't lose face. But another voice, softer, unfamiliar, stirred under it. The memory of her stare when she stood up that first day, calm, unbroken. The way she wiped her hands and refused to shrink even when he tried to make her small. The driver stepped out again, eyes darting between the smoke and his boss. "Sir, we can't start it. I'm pushing this on the street. It's not safe." His hands shook just enough to show he was scared of more than just the car. He was scared of being in the middle of a fight between pride and reality. Maya took a slow breath and walked closer, stopping just short of the hood. She kept her voice even, respectful, but not weak. Look, I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm telling you the truth. That engine is overheating. The wiring back there is under stress. One spark, and this isn't just your problem. It's a problem for everyone standing here. A bead of sweat slid down Vincent's temple. But this time, it wasn't from the sun. He glanced at the smoke, then at the circle of people forming around them. Some held up their phones now, pretending to scroll, cameras quietly recording. This was how reputations cracked in the age of the internet. Not behind closed doors, out in the open. And for Kay, he could feel it, control slipping through his fingers like oil. He tried to grab it back with the only thing he knew. His tone fine, he said, voice sharp. Look at it, but if you scratch it, you won't be able to afford to breathe near a car again. The threat hung in the air, but it felt smaller than his fear. Maya didn't flinch, didn't roll her eyes, didn't fire back. She just nodded once. Move back, she told him. You too, she added to the driver, the crowd, everyone. Give it space. Heat and fuel don't like people standing too close. Slowly, the circle widened. People stepped back, but their attention stayed locked in. The garage felt like a stage. The car, the smoke, the woman with the antique tools at the center of it all. Maya walked over to her toolbox, running her fingers over the worn handles. Every nick, every scratch on those tools carried a story. A night she stayed late to help a single mom who couldn't afford a full repair. A morning she fixed a delivery truck so a small business wouldn't lose rent money. To the world, they were old. To her, they were proof that you don't need shiny things to do powerful work. She picked up a wrench, a flashlight with tape on the handle, and a small multimeter that had seen better days. Then she turned back toward the dead Lamborghini, the smoke, and the man whose laugh still echoed in the corners of her mind. As she reached for the hood latch, the street held its breath. Vincent watched her, arms folded, trying to rebuild his wall of arrogance brick by brick. But his eyes gave him away. There was fear there now, and something else he didn't recognize yet. Maya's hand closed around the edge of the hood. She could feel the heat radiating through the metal, pulsing like anger. For a brief second, she paused, not because she doubted her skill, but because she knew this was bigger than a repair job. This was about respect, about dignity, about who really held the power when a machine fails and a man's pride goes with it. Then, with one firm motion, she lifted the hood. And in that split second, before anyone could see what lay beneath, before the smoke cleared and the truth revealed itself, the story of who would walk away changed. Hung in the air like the last quiet moment before a storm finally breaks. Asterisk. The hood lifted with a soft metallic groan, the kind that made the whole crowd lean forward without realizing it. Thick heat spilled upward, rising like a warning signal into the air. Maya didn't flinch. She'd stood in the face of heat before, the kind that comes from engines, and the kind that comes from people who think they're better than you. She stepped closer, letting the smoke drift past her, letting the murmurs fade behind her. Right now, there was only the hiss of an overheating monster, and the steady beat of her own calm breath. She didn't rush. She didn't show off. She didn't look at Vincent even once. Instead, she moved with the focus of someone who had rebuilt engines since before she could legally drive. Her hands, rough, weathered, marked by years of labor, hovered over the engine with a strange kind of softness, like she was listening to what the machine was trying to say. She checked one hose, then another, touched the metal with the back of her hand to feel the temperature, watched the steam curl around her wrist. There was no panic in her, no hesitation. Her old wrench tapped against a bolt with a soft, familiar sound, the same sound Vincent had mocked just days before. Behind her, Vincent stood tense, arms crossed, jaw tight. He hated how slow she looked. He hated how calm she was. But most of all, he hated the way people were watching her more than him now. Eyes that used to admire his car were now focused on the woman he had tried to embarrass. And for the first time in years, he felt something dangerously close to insecurity creeping up his spine. The crowd stayed quiet, almost reverent. There was something about watching a person work with confidence. That silences even the loudest gossip. Even the kids who had been recording shifted their cameras to focus more clearly, like they didn't want to miss a single movement. Finally, after a long, tense moment, Maya leaned in a little deeper and found the problem. A part so small it could sit in the palm of her hand. A part so worn down it looked like it had been forgotten even during manufacturing. It was a tiny failure point in the coolant system. A design flaw that she'd only seen in cars that tried too hard to be perfect. Something the dealerships kept quiet, because admitting certain cars overheated too easily wasn't good for sales. But she knew. Experience knew. Her hands knew. She pulled the part free, held it between her fingers, and let the crowd see the truth before she spoke. Then she finally turned to Vincent, slow, steady, with the kind of dignity that doesn't need to be announced. "You didn't ruin your engine," she said softly. "But if you'd kept pushing it, you'd have started a fire." The word fire hit him harder than he expected. His throat tightened. He imagined it, a spark under the hood while he was speeding on the highway. Flames licking the back window, smoke clouding his vision. He imagined headlines. He imagined the fear. For a moment, the world shifted under his feet. He swallowed hard. "A fire," he repeated, voice smaller than he intended. Maya nodded and showed him the tiny piece. "This part's faulty. It overheats. Most people don't catch it until it's too late. Dealerships replace it quietly when customers complain. But your engine is strong. It bought you a little time." Vincent stared at the worn-out part in her hand. Something in his chest sank. It was humbling to realize that the same tool set he had laughed at 2 days ago had just saved him from something he didn't even understand. The people around him murmured, not mocking, but impressed, respectful, because even the crowd could see what he refused to admit. This woman knew her craft, and he had treated her like she was nothing. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a small cloth. She wiped the grease from the part, then offered it to him. Not with sarcasm, not with pride, with quiet honesty. "Replace this," she said, "and stop revving your engine to impress the street. It's not built for that." The words should have embarrassed him, should have made him defensive. But the tone she used, gentle, steady, without judgment, broke something open inside him. Dignity hits different when it's used to help you instead of hurt you. It cuts deeper precisely because it doesn't aim to cut. Vincent's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. The crowd was watching. That used to matter to him. But in that moment, it felt like he was the only one standing there. And Maya was the only person who could hear the truth beating in his chest. "Why?" he finally said, voice cracking just enough to betray him. "Why help me? After everything I said to you?" Maya held his gaze. Her eyes were steady, brown, tired but unbroken. The hint of a sad smile touched the corner of her mouth. "Because your behavior doesn't define my character," she said simply. The words hit him harder than the word fire. They hit him in the kind of place money can't protect. Behind him, even the mechanics who had stayed silent during his insults shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded, some looked down, because everyone knew what she just said wasn't just a response. It was a truth that separated the strong from the loud, the humble from the hollow. Vincent felt the heat rise to his face, not from the engine now but from shame, real shame. Shame he couldn't hide behind a smirk or a car or a watch. Shame that wrapped itself around him and held tight. For the first time in his adult life, he felt small for a reason that had nothing to do with wealth. He looked at her hands, stained, rough, honest hands, and he understood, painfully, what he had never bothered to see before: craft, skill, humanity. And in that moment, standing in the sunlight with smoke curling behind him, Vincent Hale, the man who believed the world bent for him, felt something he didn't even recognize. Respect. Slowly, he closed his fingers around the worn-out part she had given him. He didn't argue, didn't brag, didn't pretend he understood more than he did. He simply nodded, a small, quiet nod that admitted more than any sentence he could form around them. The crowd began to disperse. The smoke cleared. The moment passed, but something in the air stage shifted, like a page had been turned. Like the story had moved to a place neither of them expected, and deep inside, Vincent knew something he would never say out loud. This breakdown, the metal failing, the engine gasping, the heat rising, had broken something inside him to dot, but unlike the car, he didn't know if he could fix it. Not yet. All he knew was that for the first time, he wanted to try. Asterisk. 2 weeks passed, but the memory of that day didn't fade. It stayed in Vincent's head like a stone pressing against the inside of his chest. Every time he replayed the moment, the engine dying, the smoke rising, the crowd watching, and the calm firmness in Maya's voice, something twisted deeper. It wasn't humiliation anymore. It wasn't even embarrassment. It was something heavier, something he didn't know how to carry. The truth. A truth about himself that he had spent years burying under money, noise, and pride. Life has a strange way of humbling you. Sometimes it comes through failure, sometimes through fear, and sometimes through a face, a single, quiet face that stands its ground when the world expects it to bow. That face, for him, was Maya's. On the 15th morning, before the sun fully climbed over the buildings, a familiar sound came rolling down 14th Street. But this time, the engine didn't roar like it owned the block. It approached with a softer hum, calm and controlled. A sound that didn't ask for attention, almost like it was trying not to disturb anyone. The mechanics in the garage glanced toward the street. No one said anything at first. They just watched as the orange Lamborghini pulled up slowly, carefully. Like a student returning to a classroom after failing a test. The door lifted, and Vincent stepped out. But he wasn't the same man who had walked into weeks earlier, wearing arrogance like a designer suit. That man had carried his pride on his shoulders like a trophy. This man carried something else, something closer to humility, something quieter and unfamiliar. His clothes were simple this time. A plain shirt, dark jeans, shoes that didn't sparkle. No watch, no smirk, no entourage. He held a small black box in his hand. Not flashy, not big, but meaningful in the way a gift looks when it took more thought than money. He walked toward Maya with careful steps, the kind of steps taken by someone who knows the ground they once walked confidently. As change beneath them, Maya was tightening a bolt on an old Honda when she noticed the shift in shadows. She looked up and froze for a moment, not in surprise, but in curiosity. She had expected this day might come, but she didn't know when, didn't know how. She stood up slowly, wiping her hands on a rag the same way she had on that first day. Only this time, the moment felt different. There was no sting, no insult waiting in the air, just silence. A silence that wasn't heavy, just honest. Vincent stopped a few feet away, cleared his throat, and looked down at the box in his hand like he was gathering courage from it. Then he spoke, and his voice didn't carry its usual sharpness. It wasn't a voice meant to be heard by a crowd. It was softer, quieter. Meant for her, Maya, he said, her name landing gently in the space between them. I came to thank you, not just for the repair, but for the lesson. The mechanics nearby paused. Even the fans seemed to quiet down. It wasn't every day a millionaire returned to a small garage to apologize, and certainly not to the woman he once mocked. Maya blinked, surprised but composed. You're welcome, she said simply, waiting for whatever came next. She wasn't expecting much. Apologies from men like him were as rare as snow in July. But Vincent wasn't offering a simple apology. He opened the black box, revealing a set of brand new precision tools, sleek, high-end, beautiful. The kind of tools mechanics dream about but rarely buy for themselves. Tools engraved with her initials. M.B. His hand shook slightly as he held them out. These are yours. Maya stared at them, then at him. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Maybe not, he replied. But I needed to. He swallowed, forcing out the words sitting in his chest like stones. I thought money made me powerful. I thought the car I drove, the suit I wore, the name on my business card. That all of that made me more than other people. His voice dipped, raw. But that day, When that engine died and you saved me from something I didn't even understand, I realized I wasn't powerful at all. I was just loud. Maya didn't speak. She let the silence hold him accountable, not with anger, but with presence. Vincent continued, the air trembling around his words. You showed me what real strength looks like. You didn't scream. You didn't insult me back. You didn't try to hurt me even when you had every reason to. You just did your job better than anyone I've ever seen. He shook his head, almost laughing at himself. And I mocked you. I treated you like you were beneath me. But the truth is, Maya, I was beneath myself. A few mechanics exchanged glances. One lifted his eyebrows, impressed. Another nodded slowly. The world doesn't see moments like this often. Moments where a man tears down his own pride. Brick by brick in front of strangers. Then Vincent took a breath that sounded like the first honest breath he'd taken in years. I want to offer you something, and I'm doing it publicly because I want everyone here to hear it, including myself. He straightened his back, not in ego, but in courage. I want you to be the official lead mechanic for my entire luxury fleet. All my cars, full autonomy, full respect, full pay. On your terms. The garage went silent, completely silent. Even the air felt still. Maya stared at him, stunned. Not because of the offer itself, impressive as it was, but because of the sincerity behind it. She searched his face for the arrogance he once wore like armor. It wasn't there. She searched for the smirk he never seemed to remove. Gone. For the sharpness in his tone. Gone to dot. All that was left was a man who had finally met his own truth. Slowly, Maya nodded. I accept, she said softly. Not because of the cars. Not because of the money. But because I see you're different now. Better. Vincent let out a long breath. His shoulders dropping, relief spreading through him like warmth. He nodded, stepping back with gratitude shining in his eyes. As he turned to leave, Maya called out. Her voice gentle but steady. People reveal who they are in moments of power, she said, but they redefine who they are in moments of humility. Vincent stopped. The sentence sank into him like a seed being planted, one that would grow for years. He looked back at her, and for the first time, he didn't see a mechanic. He saw a teacher's mirror, a reminder that humanity isn't measured in wealth, but in how we treat those who owe us nothing. Maya watched him walk away, the sunlight reflecting off the newly calmed Lamborghini behind him. And in that quiet moment, she felt something too, the simple peace that comes from standing firm in who you are, no matter who tries to diminish you. Because sometimes the richest transformations don't happen in engines or metal. They happen in people once life finally breaks through their pride. Asterisk.